enough.
Yeah, that's fine.
My name is Bex Baraona and this is my Yeti SB150 and we're going to do a bit of a bike check today. Talk you through it. Woo! So I'm on the SB150, which is 150mm travel on the rear and 170mm Fox 38s on the front. Yeah, so it's a size medium, which is the same as Richie's, which is maybe a bit surprising for some, but the size-wise it feels pretty good for me. Maybe I'm just as hench as Richie, you know what I mean? Super fortunate that like most things are quite similar to my last ride on Ibis, so suspension, drivetrain, cockpit's pretty similar actually, like got the OneUp bars and stem, but yeah the drivetrain, so it's like Shimano XTR everything, 4-piston brakes and cranks, 175 cranks with a 32 chainring, and then the smaller cassette, so it's 10, I think it's 10, yep, it's 1046. 203 rotors front and back, Saint pedals, I prefer like a bit of a wider platform. And then new for me this year is obviously the frame and the grips, saddle and seat post, so on the Fox seat post this year. It's the same tyre setup to last year, which is mint for me. At the moment I'm running a pretty worn DHF on the rear and a DHF on the front. I go for DoubleDown casing on the front just because I've got a bit more accuracy with the front wheel and less accuracy with the back wheel, so I've got downhill casing on the rear. Don't tend to run inserts. Last year I was on carbon wheels, sometimes ran inserts like if it was like super rocky place, but most of the time not. And this year I'm on alloy wheels, I'm on the DT Swiss EX1700s, and so far I quite like the feel of them. I was quite surprised. I was a bit nervous that I wouldn't get the sort of rigidity and like stiffness in the wheels, but I'm actually really enjoying the feel of them and they go really well with the bike. So similar to last year, I've got the OneUp bar, which I have at 740, which I wouldn't mind going a little bit smaller, but we'll see. I'm trying out a few different Ergon grips at the moment just to get the right one for the season. On Ergon saddles, and then the stem is 35mm, so nice and short as it can be really. And then we've got the OneUp tool, which is super useful. The thing that I'm sort of pernickety about is like noise. So people might spend their time tuning a bike, like wanting suspension settings, but I'm just more like, if there's some kind of cable, I don't know, making a noise or whatever, I'm just like, ugh. But obviously I like to get it set up, but yeah, I like to keep all the cables at the front nice and tidy and taped together, but no, not really into like geeky numbers and that.
You just ride it.
Just ride it, yeah. I like to get my saddle height the right height, that's about it. No, I don't know the weight. We could weigh it. I've got no means of weighing it though. It doesn't feel heavy. It feels great. I honestly don't. I'm not bogged down by that. I'm sure if I was on a bike that was like not of this calibre, I'd probably be a bit like more frustrated, like if it's a super heavy bike or something. But yeah, I'm picky about my brakes. They just need to have the same bite point every time. If my suspension isn't fully getting on with that track or something, like it doesn't bother me that much. It's more the control for me on a bike comes from my brakes. So yeah, they've got to kind of be perfect position. And everyone that gets on my bike, they can't seem to hold on properly because the shifter's in the way, because I've got like little thumbs, so it's like right in the way for most people. So I suppose I set up my cockpit a little bit weird, and honestly tyre pressure doesn't really, I think it's more mental that like I mainly check it when I'm racing. I don't tend to do much checking when I'm like training and stuff, unless I'm doing like time runs or something like that, or like testing out different tyres. I like to run pretty low pressures in training like at home and stuff, so then you know how hard the wheels can take a beating. Usually run about 14 psi.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly. I think you need to though, like, because then when we go racing and I run like maybe usually something like 19 and 20 or 19, 21 or something like that, then you know that you've tried in training so much lower and like the rims have held up, so that's how I see it. But I also don't want to be that person at the start of a ride that's just like, okay, I need to do this, need to check this, need to do that. I'm just like, just get on your bike and ride it. Pretty much. Like there's always different trends with like where to run your brakes, and I remember like the Frenchies were trying to set a trend of them being super flat, and I was like forcing myself to ride like that, and then people have told me to run like super low before, but I have started raising them a little bit. I like to basically just get like the angle of my brakes so that like depending on what track you're at, like if it's something steeper, so that your wrist is kind of like in a straight line, because if you're like braking like this, I get like a really unnerving kind of rolling type feeling. So yeah, I'll probably just adapt it on the fly. Like I run them pretty loose, to be fair. Not loose, but like they're not cranked up. So mainly if you crash, they can move and don't just like break your levers off. Obviously I'm on a new frame now, but the fork is set up pretty much how it was like when I was on an Ibis. The shock, when I first jumped on this bike, it felt like super soft compared to what I was used to. Like, so they set the shot up for me like a baseline kind of setting, and we're just going to go from there and start tweaking it and do some testing days. But straight away I was like, whoa, that's a soft sort of back end. But I've just stuck with it, like with their recommendation, and it's super smooth on the back end. So, but I try to keep my bike set up how I race it, because, which is like maybe a bit backwards, but like if you keep it set up for racing, when I'm out riding and if I'm not riding fast, like the bike doesn't feel as good, so it makes me want to like ride up to speed. I don't get bogged down on it. I just focus on it when it comes to kind of racing and stuff, to be honest, because you can just start puzzling over suspension for ages. So just save that for racing. We're in the off season now. Yeah, the fork I've pretty much like, I'm super happy with the settings I've found from the last 4 years riding with Fox, and then obviously the last year on this new fork. A lot higher pressures than it used to be, so I'm running like between 89 sort of 91 psi in the front, with 2 tokens or spacers, volume spacers I think is the correct terminology. Kind of quite a harsh fork. A hard fork is better, rather than like just the diving feeling is like, oh, the worst in racing. So jumping on this bike for the first time, or like the first month or so I've been riding it, there's a few standout things like that I've noticed that I'm super excited about, which is first of all like the back end, the sort of traction, and whenever you're sort of charging or you're like, I don't know, do a little hop into something chundery and gnarly, I'm like kind of bracing myself, but it just glides through it. Like like, I suppose the best way to say is like it's buttery smooth on the back end, which is really enjoying that, pretty confidence inspiring. And then the other thing is the riding position. A couple of times I'm still not fully like used to like maybe the length of the bike. It's ever so slightly longer than what I'm used to. So sometimes I'll like go to pump into something and like the back end follows a bit later than I expect. But I mean, all that's just going to come with time on the bike. But the position that I'm in on this new bike is a little bit more forward, because the stem is quite slammed, which was like a recommendation from Yeti. Because straight away when I saw the bike for the first time, I was like, whoa, that's a slammed front end. And they were like, that's how these bikes ride best, is like more over the front. So I'm sort of taking that on board, and puts obviously a lot more pressure through the front wheels, so you get more traction. And yeah, I love it. Keep coming for the outro. Thanks for watching, guys. This is my new bike. See you at the races. Look how grumpy.